Hi there all. My name is Johnny Bartram. I'm a account development lead for higher education here at Blueprism. So I'm just hoping my slides do load up in a second, but just a bit of an introduction. So what I'm going to be talking about today is actually looking at going forward, how do universities, and particularly looking at some of the admissions work going forward, how do we adapt to that? So you'll see here the slides have come up. So looking at how does intelligent automation transform the way that universities deliver services, and really what's underpinning that is actually how do we free up the resources, how do we free up the people at universities to deliver services better for the university, but also deliver student services better. So just a little bit of background on Blueprism. So we are a UK software company headquartered in Warrington. We actually initially worked in the space of RPA, or robotic process automation, starting over sort of 20 years ago, which might be a common phrase or a common terminology in that space that you're used to, which has now really matured over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, going into intelligent automation. So in sort of the next 20 minutes, I'm going to cover three sort of main areas, which is what are the barriers that we're trying to overcome within the university space with intelligent automation. I think that varies a lot depending on the universities and how they can use this technology. Then look at some of the examples and areas where we think we can be of great help, and to share with you then what work we're doing with other universities across the UK and overseas, and then just to finish with any questions that audience members have as well. So just to really kick off with is actually looking at some of the barriers and where does intelligent automation fit. So if you look at a university, one of the biggest challenges we've seen actually is the inefficiency of manual processes. So right now you usually have people, employees actually doing a lot of the process. Now this varies right from back office, so finance, HR, right through to some of your student administration services, even really student inquiry services, and some of this what you typically call your customer service functions. And right now, as I say, there's people who are doing those. And why that is because you've got a lot of systems. So each department has its own systems. And actually, it's a case of actually putting data into a system, moving data from one system to another. Or actually, in worst case, you've actually got an employee sat there moving data from one system to multiple systems. And what that leaves you with there is this last point, which is that inflexible deployment of resources. So you're not using your employees to the best of their capabilities. You're actually having them do these sort of administrative tasks that are usually high volume, repetitive, really simple stuff in terms of copying and pasting data from one place to another. So what we want to do is we want to remove that, and we refer to it as really removing the robot from the human, and allowing the human to do the human work, which is that collaboration, being creative, really doing the human tasks. So how does intelligent automation overcome this? Now, I'll cover four sort of points on this page, which is the top two, so increase efficiency and productivity, and then enhancing student experience, and then the bottom two as well, so empower employees and increase revenue and make savings as well. That's another point. So the top left is increase efficiency. So what we're trying to do with intelligent automation, I'd like you to think about it as a digital worker. So another capacity is you want these digital workers to actually remove or reduce the administrative burden that you have. Now, as I say again, this can vary across any department at the university, any area, and actually look at how can we remove some of the administrative burden that we're undertaking right now, and use digital workers to process that, which will increase that efficiency. They'll process it at speed and with 100% accuracy. And what you're going to get out of that is you're going to empower your workforce. They're going to be more productive. They've got more time to do the human tasks. And really, as a byproduct, you've got that enhanced student experience because your employees have got more time to spend with students. But also added to that, by using intelligent automation or by using these digital workers, you can actually improve those student services as well. Actually, the direct input with students would be actually how much quicker they can get response times around student inquiries, from exam results to inquests coming in as well. And the last point, which I think has really become prevalent in the sort of 3 years that I've been working in the HE market, is actually increase revenue and make savings. It's been a tough year, and I'm sure a lot of highlight around COVID, but it's a competitive market. And actually, how do we spin up better services quicker as universities? Increase revenue, increase interest from students coming on board, but also as we have constraints in terms of bringing more people and more employees into the organization. How can we make savings or make services better or sustain services, and make savings at the same time? So they're just some points that really we're trying to overcome and the goals of intelligent automation from universities. So what I want to look at now is actually how does this work? It's all very high level in terms of automating some processes and freeing up the workforce. Well, if you look at this as a typical university's organization structure, you've got your shared back office function, which I've highlighted in terms of finance, procurement, HR, IT. You've got sort of your core business operations, which is for the most is around actually the student administration, and then into your front office, which in your world really is looking at actual teaching services, lecturers, that sort of focus. Now, within all these different departments or faculties, you'll have teams and departments that sit within that. And right now, these people are the people doing the process. This area of administration that we're really focusing on in terms of trying to remove. Now, to some extent, you actually might already have some layer of automation that sits in there, just like this on the screen now. So you'll have a little bit of tactical. So a prime example for anyone in the finance world is looking at things like invoice processing coming into there. Just a little example of every organization is doing a very basic level of automation. What we're trying to do is come over and sit as a layer over the top of the whole organization and actually deliver what we'd call a digital workforce. And what this gives, you can see on the screen sort of 6 heads now, is we see that as capacity. So that's actually just over 1,000 hours of capacity. So these digital workers work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to deliver as much work as possible for the organization. And they're actually flexible, so they're multi-skilled. So a lot of automation is tied to a process. So whatever you automate is what it automates. These digital workers are not tied to a process. So one digital worker could automate up to 50 to 100 processes. It's actually the time it would take to do that if you only had one digital worker. So a prime example would be that, let's say this first digital worker on the left-hand side, they could actually be supporting your HR team in the morning with absence requests that come in from staff. How many people have got on sick leave? How do we report that in the HR system? Is that paid? Is it unpaid leave? What's the repercussions of that? Who do we need to notify? You could actually have a digital worker pick up that information from an email or from a form, report it into the systems, trigger an email to relevant people. Once that's done in the morning, you can actually go and help the customer-facing team, so a student team. In the afternoon, the student requests come in or inquiries come into that team there. If they're coming in by chatbot, coming in by a web form or by email, the digital worker can pick things up in terms of questions from the student, which could be around, when are my assignments due? What is these deadlines? When will I hear back on this? A digital worker can pick up those. So actually for the more urgent inquiries, you can actually have staff on the phone speaking to students, actually picking up things that are more urgent. I think one of the biggest areas we see the benefit of this for universities is actually the university has peaks in demand across the year, which particularly for the student administration teams and admissions is actually looking at, you've got the same amount of staff roughly all year round, but you're going to have peaks in terms of volumes of data and volumes of processes or administrative processes that need to be done. And that's always going to be around admissions and student onboarding at your cohorts, particularly September and January cohorts, depending how your university operates. And actually, how do you deal with this increase in demand with the same number of staff, these peaks? And actually, that's where digital workforce really helps. For instance, the 6 digital workers on the screen right now, you can actually have them supporting and delivering that work behind your staff in terms of doing a lot of the administrative burden, actually helping to process applications, and something that I'll come on to in a couple of slides to give you a further detailed example. But it's all about having a flexible pool of resources that can support across different processes, across different departments, and really helping to transform the whole organization in terms of benefiting everyone and freeing up time for everyone. So just moving on from that, I want to show 2 sides of this, just in terms of the audience, and look at both back office and then into actually specific HE processes. So we're talking about a lot about taking away processes and automating processes to free up people. So these are just some of the processes that some of our organizations and some of our universities are automating right now in back office. So you'll see here things around IT and operations. So IT passwords resets is a large one across both staff and students. Then into typical HR, employee onboarding. Examples where this is really useful is around things like guest lecturers that are always coming in and actually coming in and off payroll. How do you manage that? And then typical stuff in finance, such as invoicing, which I've referred to before. If you actually then look at this next slide, this is looking a little bit more into specific higher education processes and what some of our customers are actually using our platform to automate and actually take away from the humans. So the top three are quite important around some of the student processes, so student forms, admissions and enrollment, things like CAS as well, and then looking at withdrawals or delays in study and transfers to other courses, which have implications around course pricing, for example, and actually how's that financed in terms of from the student side. So these are just some of the areas and some of the processes that some of the universities we're working with are doing right now. Now, if you actually look at what's the benefit of actually automating these processes, and we talk about freeing up capacity as always, and obviously there's a cost to that as well. So just here on the slide, the first four processes are more back office, but these are processes that universities do right now. So UCL, right, a few of these top processes around one-off payments, levers, bank payment methods, and supplier statement reconciliation. And what this is helping to do is in terms of actually looking at business outcomes and the business benefit. So UCL are actually saving 3,300 hours, for example, per annum just by automating that one process. And the next one down, you can see again, 990 hours returns to the business. And then the bottom two there. So just from those four processes, there's actually way over 7,000 hours they're saving for their back office team and freeing up that time for staff to focus on the things that are more human, more engaging, more creative, things that are more actually high value tasks that are more critical to actually business operations and improving how the university runs its service. The bottom one there, the student undergraduate admissions process, is another university that looked at this process. So they get over 25,000 applications per annum, which actually, if you look at some of the bigger universities, isn't that high, who are getting over sort of 100,000 applications per year plus more. So per each process, it actually takes 8 minutes, but usually the process is very simple. It's not really any decision making. There's a set criteria that's filled in. So it's actually just a very process driven, and the team have to get through them. It's quite a mundane task. They're having to do a lot of it all at once. It's very easy to make mistakes. And actually, as a repercussion, sometimes students miss out on being offered a place, which is both bad for the university and for the student itself in terms of the revenue opportunity and students where they want to go. So looked at automating this process, which would realise a saving of 5 FTE, so freeing up 5 people's worth of time, with savings of over 70,000. But really, one of the biggest that is just that process alone. They reckon would save 4,000 hours just in terms of those particular times when they're actually onboarding students. So it's looking at how you can operate those services better just by removing some of the processes and the time that was saved. And the idea is that actually, when you look at the application process, let's say 80% of the process is very simple. It's a very clear decision. And actually the 20% where you need decision making and human intuition is actually where you want your workforce to be focusing their time and effort on. So just moving on from these processes, I'll talk you through just some of our customers and particularly what some of our customers are doing with automation or with intelligent automation. So you'll see there's 3 from the UK and then just University, which I'll talk a bit detail, is there sort of our longest term customer within the HE space. So really sort of grown their automation journey out. So I'll start in terms of the left, looking at UCL. I know I highlighted some of their processes on the last page, but saving over 7,000 hours, 7,000 hours back to the business in terms of freeing up that capacity for their HR and finance team. They've actually identified over 50 processes just in finance and HR now, so they haven't even got out of the stage of going, okay, we've done what we can in this department over the last year and a little bit. We actually want to take this further. So they're actually at the moment looking at over 50 processes just in those departments alone, which will save hours. And actually the reason UCL started this journey was They had a resource constraint in their HR team. They didn't have headcount to bring anyone in, so needed to look at how do we deliver services differently to achieve the target. How can we look to use technology to free up the workforce to actually better deliver this? That's how they went around that. Next to sort of University of Plymouth and Staffordshire University, they're actually both been on their journey for less than a year now. And already Plymouth, from the processes, they've automated 6 processes, which will see 5,000 hours return back to the business annually, and 141,000 annual saving as well, on top of that in terms of resource time as well. And then Staffordshire University is quite an interesting one. So we engaged with them last summer, and they'd actually done a employee engagement survey. And actually one of the key topics that came out was that staff were burdened with administration. It was actually one of the biggest challenges that staff felt. They just had so much administration to do, which is quite a common theme across universities. So they looked at intelligent automation to actually, as its core benefit, to free up the capacity of the workforce and actually focus staff more on student services, student experience, and be more involved in that world rather than the administration. So one of the first processes they looked at was processing tuition fees for students that have to withdraw or delay. Actually quite a complex process. It was actually a good process to test the capability of the technology. And just this process alone was saving 2 hours a day for the team there. And then lastly, the University of Sydney. So you'll see bigger numbers here. So UCL have been doing their journey for roughly 18 months, and then both Staffs and Plymouth less than a year into their intelligent automation journey, whereas University of Sydney are sort of coming 3.5 into 4 years. So all related, in terms of transformation, they're all getting benefits in a very short period of time. But this really shows what you can achieve within sort of 3 to 4 years by using this technology. So they're delivering automations across the whole university, from admissions through to back office functions, through to some of the customer service functions as well. So they've automated over 50 processes. They're looking to go over 100 in the next year. And the reason for that is actually once you've built processes, it's very easy to reuse those processes to then build more, or reuse parts of those processes to then build more processes. So as you get up to building 10, 15 processes, it's very then easy to scale that to 30, then to 60, and start upping those numbers in terms of building that out. But once you actually start to automate across the organisation, as Sydney have done, you're looking at their annual savings of £2.4 million per year, which is pounds. That's not Australian dollars. So that's actually £2.4 million they're saving annually, and actually moving into quite transformational areas around exam checks. So now 90% of their exam checks are automated using Blueprism. So they're actually, in terms of getting results faster to students, improving that student experience, and actually getting those sort of results, and actually the data quality and the data accuracy behind that as well is hugely improved. And I just highlight at the bottom there, within their first year, they actually did have quite a successful first year in terms of saving 10,000 hours in the first 12 months of delivery. So just the last couple of things I want to walk you through, which just might be of particular interest, is actually what does a customer journey look like, and what have our universities deliver? So we work really hard to actually, I think there's a lot around digital transformation and getting transformation up and running, and projects taking 5, 10 years to really get anywhere. What we want to do is really not focus on transformation, is focus on processes and business challenges. We want to come in and solve a business challenge, which is where this technology is great, because you can apply it to multiple different departments. And it's really, where are the high volumes, where are the burdens that we're facing? So this is actually a customer journey. It's actually a UK police force. So this is Avon and Somerset Police, who started their journey back in November 2019, you see here. And they actually identified 13 really strong processes for automation. They picked 2, which were the ones that were really sort of the highest in volume, or the biggest sort of burden. And they went live in terms of working with Blueprism to automate these 2 processes. And this is what they initially saved within the first sort of 2 to 3 months, which was 665 hours, which would be equivalent to 1,800 hours per year and equivalent to 1.5 FTE. So, first 3 months, nothing transformational, not going to change the world or the way the police force operated, but it proved the technology worked, and proved that automation could be used as a tool. If you then look at what could be achieved sort of just over a year later, so 12 to 14 months, This is where they went with the technology. So they went from 2 processes to 24. And actually, when you look at, they've scaled out. So although we're thinking about this on a process level, if you start to think about like Sydney have done up to sort of 50 plus processes, once you start to get to that level where you're taking multiple processes out of the organization, and they're now up to 24 processes live, 27,000 hours saved to date, and 42,000 hours equivalent per year. And actually, in terms of freeing up capacity for the workforce, that's 32.5 FTE. They actually view it in terms of actually that's the digital worker capacity. So 32 FTEs is what we're bringing into the force. So it just gives you an idea. I know it's not a university example, but in terms of similar size of organization, around about 6,000 people, in terms of what they're actually delivering on their intelligent automation journey. So they're just some stuff I want to highlight to give you an understanding of the work we're doing and how it's all about sort of looking at the business outcomes and looking at your own organization, at the processes that you have in your department or your university as such, and how we look to remove those away and some of what the universities are doing, and just a bit of a journey. So I'll just go into the last slide really, which is just some my details and just some resources that are worth looking at. One there from Staffordshire Uni, and some work below, some links to both University of Sydney and UCL as well. And I'll just go to any QA questions that have come in. So the first questions just come in here in the Q&A. Do you work with Microsoft 365 Team Suite to support the automation of processes? Yeah, and there's and Power Automate. So yeah, in terms of this, if you so yes, it does. So in terms of the platform, it does integrate with the Microsoft Office. Microsoft are a partner of ours as well. So in terms of actually delivering in their suite, and you've actually asked a question around the Power Automate. So it actually plugs in really well to the Power Automate platform. So if you look at the Microsoft stack, Power Automate is really good at automating processes in Microsoft stack. Once you go outside of that, and you actually look at all your other systems, it might be back office from SAP, some of your admission systems, that's where that tool isn't great. It's very task oriented to Microsoft. And actually, how do you automate processes from end to end? So we want to take a process from start to finish and try and remove that from the human. Now, in some cases, there needs to be a decision that's made. So you can actually have it where the process might be automated to a certain extent, and the digital worker passes off to a human to make a decision. And then that triggers the digital worker to then carry on the process for some of the more complex processes. But yes, it integrates with Microsoft to answer the question, and it plugs in really well actually in terms of actually you could have the Power Automate automating on the Microsoft and then passing over to Blueprism to actually carry on the automation on systems outside of the Microsoft stack, which Power Automate won't work on. So I hope that answers that. Another question is, who builds the automations and processes? So there's different ways of doing it. The way I like to see it, and the way that the majority of the universities working with doing it is, we'd come in and support building the first couple of processes. And then actually we want you to manage the platform and actually build the processes yourself. This is object-based architecture. And what I mean by that is it's a bit like Microsoft Visio to look at. So it's a bit like building blocks to build a process. So you build an object library, and these objects can build processes out. And what I mean by that object library is that you build out objects. So for instance, a start of a process would be really simple. It'd be enter username, log into system, click here, whatever it is. That process that process object could be used multiple times for a process, and that's how you start to scale out. But in terms of building it, business people are the best people for it because they understand processes. People internally within a university who understand processes and how processes works are actually the best people to build up processes. They know what they should look like. They know how should they work. Because intelligent automation right now is within the tech space is the fastest growing sector as a vertical is intelligent automation and hyper automation. A lot of universities are looking at how do we use Blueprism and how can we actually upskill students to build automations for the university. So bringing them involved in the university journey to say, what do you want to see improved at the university? What could be done better? And actually involve them in building automations for the university and actually upskills them and actually developing those. So there's multiple ways of doing it, but I think that's a great way to actually get students involved on this journey, and staff involved in actually new technology that's actually not designed for developers and coders as such. Next question: how do you find suitable processes? Yeah, this is always one of the biggest challenges, is around finding processes, and one of the biggest things we get asked. The first thing is a university knows its processes better than I do or Blueprism do. So you know what's going on in your department, your faculty as such. We have ideas, and obviously I've shared some processes in the slides, which I can hopefully can be shared around, or if anyone wants to contact me to share them, happy to. So we've got good ideas around what we think looks good in universities, where the demand is, where the high volumes are, where you have challenges with certain systems varies from one organisation to another. But what we do is when we engage with universities, we will run a workshop, which is all free, and we'll actually work with you to identify some areas of high volumes. We'll look to see if we think that we can automate that. We'll look at what's actually the business benefits of that at the end of the day. What would that achieve? And then obviously go from there. The idea is we always look to really build a business case from processes before you start this journey. We want you to be successful, so we need to look at the processes that are actually going to give a benefit back to the business. And the last question here, I believe, is can we engage with universities using this technology? Yes, happy to. Some of these universities are already engaged with one another. The way I'll explain this as well is that, so I sit within our public sector team, so we work with 60 plus NHS trusts, 30 councils, and a number of police forces as well. And actually, if you look at the NHS, which is the most mature sort of market in the public sector for intelligent automation, the 60 trusts are actually sharing automations. And because it's objects, they can actually share processes they've built. What that means is actually, instead of them all building the same process, all at different times, they actually share that workload. So they'll actually go, some of the trusts now have come together and gone, okay, these are the processes we want to automate. Do you want to automate them? Are these, and some of them will be like, no, that's very individual to our trust, or, yes, we want to do that. So they actually go away, build processes, and then share them. And we've replicated that in local gov, and we've replicated that, we're just about to do that in police, and we want to do it in higher education as well, as more universities come on board with this technology. Obviously, it's a bit different in universities, it's a bit more of a competitive market as such compared to the rest of the public sector. However, from the sort of universities we engage with, they seem very keen to do that. So yeah, more than happy to. It's more of on an individual basis how universities want to do that. Yes, that's it from me. As I say, my contact details are on the slide there. If anyone wants to reach out, but thank you for your time.